So right when you're ready to start, just start recording to the cloud.
So I just hit that just to make sure, and I'm going to share screen, and I'm going to share this screen over here, and I'm going to hit share screen. And what do you guys all see?
I see a full dome image of Pacific Science Center, Earth pole to pole.
That's what I was hoping you would see. Okay. Should I begin, or you want to?
Good.
Well, you can begin. Do you want me to introduce you, or do you want to introduce
Why
you?
don't you introduce me?
Okay.
I think I know many of the people here, but go ahead and introduce me.
Did you? Okay, hit the record.
I thought I had. Let me double check that.
My computer says
Screen mode, the image has changed.
Okay, it is recording.
It is?
It looks like it. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah,
Okay.
I hit record before I shared the screen.
Okay. All right. Well, welcome to the Pacific Planetarium Seminar for the month of July. And we have the pleasure of having a brief presentation by Dave Cuomo from the Pacific Science Center. So without further ado, let's just launch right into it. Dave.
All right. Well, hey, everyone. Thank you for putting this together, Alan. I've really enjoyed the way we've been meeting this year. It's been really enjoyable. And thanks, everyone, for coming. I'm going to go ahead and start this over here. So, in July of 2018, we, along with the University of Washington, received a National Science Foundation grant to engage students and the public in polar research through live interactive planetarium shows. It's a 3-year NSF grant. We're working with the University of Washington Polar Science Center and also the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. I don't have them on here, but the United States Coast Guard as well, in the shape of the icebreaker Healy, which is home ported in Seattle, Washington. And it's a very broad scoped presentation grant. It's we do daily live presentations. The grant year runs July 1st to June 30th. So the first grant, we're just in the first month of the second grant year. And the first grant year was beginning to develop the programs, and the second year is delivery and prototyping. And we started daily delivery about 2 weeks ago. I was going to start on July 1st. I ended up starting on the 7th or the 9th or something like that. But we have a daily 40-minute presentation. Coming up, another part is that we have a group of polar science researchers from the University of Washington who will write their own 10-minute section of the larger program. One of my planetarians delivers the larger program, hands it off briefly to the researcher who delivers their section, and then back to the planetarian. The shows are right now, they are UniView shows. There will be, for those UniView users, there'll be a Domecast in 2019, 2020. In the third grant year, we do a Domecast. There will also be, I'll also port the whole show from UniView into Nightshade NG. In a little while, I'll explain why I wrote it in UniView first. And that will enable it to be shared on the NG network. And also, the Pacific Science Center has portable digitarium domes that we go out. We have an outreach program called Science on Wheels, and they go out and do these programs in schools. So a modified version of it will be a school-based program in the outreach portable domes. There you go. And they are daily. They're 40 minutes long. And we're starting out, it's really simple, and the show is going to evolve continuously. They're all live presentations. Everything at the Science Center is a live presentation. But this one's going to be, in more ways than one, a lot different than anything we've ever really done. The show, as it's being delivered right now in July of 2018, will not be the same show that's going to be delivered even by September. There are changes. As a matter of fact, I'll talk about some of the changes we're making quickly, or shortly, I should say. And then the show that evolves into the third grant year will be not a completely different show. They'll have basic elements. But we're starting out with letting our guests know what are the poles? What are the polar regions of Earth? Are they changing? How are they changing? And now I'm going to go over to Uniview and give you a little brief taste of the beginning of how the show is going and some of the modules we've created for the program. Let's hope this works. Let's see here. I want to do that. And I want to go over to here. And there, you should see that dome image again, right?
Yes, we see it.
Okay, great, great. So I start out, for those of you who might not be familiar with what you're looking at, that is an image, a 360 image. I took a 360 camera out. It's a very inexpensive one. We are a low budget operation. And even with this grant, there's not a lot to be spending on massive 360 cameras. I spent $80 on a $400 camera, but it is, for my dome, it is just this size side of acceptable imagery. It's actually, now that I'm getting used to it and knowing how to use the ISOs and the aperture, it's getting better and better. So it's a nice little, it's called a 360 fly. But I took it out and took this image, and this beginning of the show came from one of our researchers' ideas. She is a marine biologist that does fish counts in the Bering. And she thought it would be nice to do some tie-ins with Seattle on her research. And if any of you like seafood, there's a really good chance that it was caught by one of the vessels that docks at this terminal in Seattle, Washington, at Fisherman's Terminal in North Seattle. So we start out by using that to tie Seattle and where we are to the polar regions. Why does it matter? We don't spend a whole lot of time here because, well, that's a static image that's not really very interesting. So we fairly quickly take off into orbit and start laying the geography of where exactly we are, where Seattle, Washington is, where the Science Center is. We zoom in there on Puget Sound. I'm not sure if, can anyone see my mouse?
Yeah.
No? Okay. All right, I'll go back and get that off.
Actually, I saw it. Did
My mouse?
yeah.
Okay. So for those of you who aren't familiar with Seattle, this is Puget Sound. This little bay here is Elliott Bay. So this is where Seattle is. And those vessels sail up here, out the strait here, and then they pivot around along the Gulf of Alaska, tracing the continent, and end up over in the Bering Sea. And then we'll give our guests a brief tour of the polar regions, focused on Alaska here, and the Arctic over there to the right. But we won't spend a lot of time there because we're going to come back to it. But then we'll start showing how the whole region was carved by ice, including the Science Center, or including Seattle, and the whole area that we're in. And if anyone has science on a sphere, you're probably somewhat familiar with what I'm seeing. This is the 20,000 years of ice melt, of paleo ice image from Science on a Sphere. Since a lot of what we're doing, there is data on Science on a Sphere, I've been taking the Science on a Sphere animations and recreating them into UniView modules that can run. And I have to thank Mark Subaro of Adler. I first started this by basically dissecting one of his animations, figuring out how he put it together, putting my stuff in. You can download the frames from the NOAA website, from the Science on a Sphere website. There's some choices that you have to make when you do this, including limiting things down. This animation on Science on a Sphere has something like 2,900 frames. I use 40 of them. So there's some choices that need to be made to do that. And since it is a polar science show, we do talk a lot about sea ice. We use the annual sea ice changes, but we also show sea ice minimums, the September minimum in the Arctic and the Antarctic, and we take people on that. We give people a fairly brief but well done lesson on the seasons. We do a standard season lesson where we zoom out, see the Earth orbiting the sun, see, I put poles out, we do a seasons lesson, but then we land at the poles and see it from the ground, see the sun moving around the horizon in Antarctica. We do our landings at both poles during the December solstice. So it's dark in the north and it's light in the south. We talk about and I didn't know this before we started this program, that the Arctic names come from astronomy. From the Arctos is Greek for bear. So Arctic is near the bears and Antarctic is away from the bears, or under the bears, more precisely, for Ursa Major and Ursa Minor. So we go through that. It does then, of course, come back. We get into more details that I'm not going to get into for this. But then we have another element, and I mentioned that we're working with science communicators, or scientists, research scientists from the University of Washington. Some of you may be a part of the Science Communication Fellowship, either currently or when it first started in 2007 as Portal to the Public. Dennis Schatz, who I think many of you may or may not know, I don't know, started it here from the Science Center along with Explora, the North Museum of Natural History and Science, and the Institute for Learning Innovation. And it is to train scientists, research scientists, how to talk about their research to the public, because I think all of us in the seminar know that sometimes scientists aren't that great at communicating with the public, and we've often all wished that they were better, where this is a program that helps them. And it starts out the way we do it, and the way we've always done it has been, let me rephrase that, the way we typically do it is we recruit the scientists. There is a tuition. It's almost always grant funded, so it's not coming out of the scientist's pocket. Since 2007, we've trained 343 scientists, and we currently have 133 active on our roster. And its goals are to improve scientists' communication skills and increase their commitment to outreach, to model science as a process and energize the Science Center floor. with current local science, and provide our guests an opportunity to meet and engage with these scientists. So it's not the kind of scientist on a pedestal kind of thing that you often run into. It's like, here they are, they're people just like you. You could be a scientist someday. Maybe you are and you just don't know it. And they will, after their that's a 6-week course that includes some basics of things that we teach to our floor staff, introduction to interpretation and things like that, but also we have lessons on how to avoid jargon words and other similar things. They will be out on our floor, oftentimes in kind of a science fair kind of setting. They will hand make their own little activities that talk about their research, and they'll come up with things that our guests can do to engage their research. And we've been recently also putting them on Science on a Sphere. What we had never done before was put them in a planetarium, which has been, as you might expect, kind of a challenge. In essence, since I have 8 scientists and basic backbone show is what we called it, I sort of have 10 planetarium shows I've been trying to create in the last few months. So if I haven't gotten an email back to anybody, that's why. And what we started doing is we had to reinvent the way we're doing the cohort, because we'd never done anything like this. They were, with a couple of exceptions, of a scientist who's already comfortable speaking in front of large crowds, and I'll spend an hour with them teaching them how to use Science on a Sphere, which for those of you who might have one know, it's relatively easy to pick up the iPad, at least enough to do a simple presentation, and then let them practice for a while. Well, this was different. I realized going in, we weren't going to be able to train the scientists on how to use UniView or NG. That was not going to be an option. And since we do have our presenters, our planetarians there, our planetarians are still running the controls, they're running the tech. But we modified the cohort so they had some introduction to improvisation. We did some improv games, basics on how to be a big presenter, how to present to a large crowd, how to get over any stage fright that you might have with that. It's different than doing one-on-one facilitations, as we all are aware of. And also, instead of having those 6 weeks devoted to building their hands-on thing, they wrote a 10-minute script. And this cohort, it had the 8 scientists, but I also had 2 of my planetarians, Laura Grace Beckerman and Rin Shearer, who both went through the cohort just as though they were one of the research scientists for a couple of reasons. It was a great opportunity for them to get it, but also so that they could build the bond. As we start rolling out the scientists coming in to do their presentation, they'll be doing it with either myself or Rin or Laura Grace. I have 5 other planetarians who are doing the Polar Science Show, but at least to begin with, I want the scientist interaction part to be with one of the 3 of us who we've built a rapport with and some performance chemistry with. So instead of coming up with a prop that they would show to guests on the floor in a science fair kind of setting, they wrote a 10-minute script, and we came in and we started putting that into the planetarium format. I then focused on creating the backbone, working on that with Harry Stern, who's the PI at the University of Washington for the project. The PI here at the Pacific Science Center is our Vice President of Education, Kenny Sturgeon. And we worked, Harry and I worked back and forth on the script. I created the UniView program, and now in the next couple of weeks, I will start adding the 10-minute sections for the scientists, with the intention of by the end of summer at least having a couple of those actually happening. So what's next? This, by the way, this photograph you're looking at is one of the photographs. Two of our researchers researched the circulation and chemical composition of the Southern Ocean. This was taken by one of those researchers. That is a South African icebreaker in the Southern Ocean. We'll throw some video up. This is not a 360 video, but it still looks pretty good. And I think I'll get some people seasick maybe, depending on how big I throw it up. But it's a video of the icebreaker in rough seas in the Southern Ocean. But then to humanize scientists, they had a snowball fight on the deck, which is kind of cool. And also we've got other images and things that they're bringing in. These two researchers use harbor seals, or not harbor seals, excuse me, I'm in Seattle. They use elephant seals that they already have transmitters that are put on them by biologists, and they modified them to take temperature, salinity, depth information so that they can get under the ice to see it. And we're going to be talking about that through the program. In the third grant year, there'll be a UniView Domecast sometime, probably in 2020. Realistically, the first half of 2020 will realistically be the Domecast. There will also be Nightshade lessons for our Science on Wheels about the same time that'll go out. And then, of course, the UniView panel show will be available for UniView users on the community site. And then the modules, the Science on a Sphere modules, I'll probably put those up sometime in the next 6 to 8 weeks. They're all working, they all look good. There's a couple of little things in the code and things that I just want to clean up before I make them public to everybody. But since I've already premiered them in the Willard Smith Planetarium, I'll put those up on the community site sometime soon for those who use UniView. The lesson itself will be created for the knowledge base, and that will take a little longer. Nightshade's catching up with the ability to do this. It's very close to being able to do it. The reason I used UniView first is mostly because I know it better. I have a system that uses both UniView and Nightshade. I've been using UniView longer, and I've been writing panels and shows in UniView longer, so I can work on it faster. I have 8 planetarians, but when it comes to creation and things like that, I'm pretty much a one-person shop, although Rin and Laura. Rin can do coding as well, or not scripting, it's not really coding. And Laura Grace was a huge help on the script and prototyping, but there's a lot of one-person shop here, so that's why I went with what I know best and can do quickest. And I just want to quickly give you another little image of one of the things that we can do with the scientists. We have 8 scientists. 2, as I mentioned, are studying ocean circulation in the Southern Ocean. We have 2 climate modelers that they were facing some interesting challenges trying to think of how to visualize it, but it actually works out really well. One of them turns it into a story about what got her interested in science that really personalizes the science that she's working on. So we've got 2 oceanographers, 2 climate modelers, a person who studies ice cores in from Antarctica. We have the 2 fisheries people I mentioned before, who one working in the Chukchi Sea in the Arctic, and one working in the Bering, and then a woman who works understanding these guys, diatoms, And I tell you, when this fills up the dome, the audience is very impressed. So it becomes a pretty cool little show that we are working on. I'm creating multiple starts for it. I've got the Fisherman's Terminal start that we have been looking at, but also I'm creating a start. I recently was able to go on a cruise in Puget Sound aboard the Coast Guard Gutter Healy with the 360 video, and brought that along and got some 360 video of that. So I'm going to have an alternate start that starts out there. I'm also working on a start that actually starts out in space, that you can't see the Earth and you fly into the Earth and treat it like truly a planetary science show. And that's how I'm billing it, is as a planetary science show that focuses on the northern and southern polar regions of the planet Earth. And it's been a lot of fun. I've learned how to do a lot of things, and it's still going on. So questions, and Alan, I might need your help with this because I'm not sure how to run a meeting.
Okay, what I usually do if you're, well, first of all, let's all give David a round of applause for this. Unmute, and applause.
Thank you.
Okay, there were a few muted applause there, but
I saw a couple hands clapping. It's fine. Thank you.
what I usually do is stop the recording and restart it so that we get two different files for
Gotcha.
the presentation and for the question and answer. So if you could you do that? Stop the recording.
I don't know. Once I went and did the share screen, I lost those controls. I've just got everybody in a long, thin, like film strip thing, and I can't quite see how to change that. Let's see. Show larger active speaker video. That
Hit escape. Hit escape and see if it'll bring your.
No, that didn't do anything. Show small active screen video.
Can you move your cursor around on the?
Can you?
Well, maybe if I go back into Zoom and go to meeting controls. Go back into Zoom and.
Actually, you could stop sharing. Stop sharing.
Yeah, I'm looking for that command to stop sharing.
Oh, it's at the top, maybe? At the top of your screen?
Here, I'll tell you what, let me see if it's behind something. Sorry, everybody.
I knew it was dangerous to make somebody else the host.
Yeah, uh-huh.
But
no, that's not doing anything. Oh, I don't want to do that.
you need to see the menu of things where.
Well, you know what? It might be behind over here. I'm going to quit out of Uniview. Yeah, that's what it's up here. Stop share. There we go. There we go. Okay, it was on my, I've got a 2-monitor setup here, and it was over hard to see on the other monitor, so I'm going to stop recording.
Yep.